Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of To The Point podcast. Everybody's doing well tonight. We're here on a Tuesday, and normally I'm with Seamus. We're doing our Breaking Bad coverage, but Shay is off this week for the festivities. Obviously the holiday being normally a Canada Day holiday. This year obviously a bit different, but nevertheless he has some time off. So we had a chat last night, and we may do the podcast later in the week. If not, we'll be back next Tuesday to recap the finale of season 2 of Breaking Bad. But that will be on your horizon. But tonight, I'm here to talk about a lot. There's a busy day, just at work today, seeing, news items come up on my phone, with different signings, some injuries at Wimbledon, the terrible weather so far. And of course, game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals last night, where the Tampa Bay Lightning defeated the Montreal Canadiens 5-1. And, that'll be the main topic of conversation today, giving you kind of my take on last night's game and leading you into game 2, which thank you for everybody who tuned into the Facebook Live last night. Join. It's going to be tomorrow night at 8 o'clock on To The Point Facebook page. If you have any questions that you want me to answer, I was with Casey last night. I'll be with a special guest tomorrow night as well. This friend has never been on the podcast yet. I believe we may actually be doing it in person, where both of our heads, I don't know how it's going to work because I got a big one, is going to fit onto this computer screen. So we're going to be chatting tomorrow night. That should be a lot of fun. But join the conversation. Bring your takes, and I'll read out your comments on the air. So I'm always I love doing that. I like seeing people get involved, and it was great to go live last night prior to game 1. But after talking to Casey, we go over the goaltending matchup and it being one of the greatest of all time. We heard on the broadcast last night talking about Ron Brodeur, Belfour, and Dominic Hasek in 1999. Vasilevsky Price is definitely right up there, both winning a Vezina Trophy in their careers. Vasilevsky winning a Stanley Cup last year, Carey Price being the greatest goaltender of a generation. Talking about Cole Caulfield coming out of Wisconsin and just being such a factor and just a great player early in his career. Nick Suzuki emerging as potential next Patrice Bergeron. Nikita Kucherov being on an incredible tear throughout the playoffs. Brayden Point's 9-game goal streak. And there's a ton of headlines coming into last night, but ultimately, they go to bed when the puck drops. And from the jump last night, the Tampa Bay Lightning were the better team. And there was no point in the game last night where I thought the Montreal Canadiens are going to steal game 1. Tampa was the aggressor from the hop. And it wasn't always with scoring opportunities. 7 minutes into the game, the shots were 4-4. You saw the Montreal Canadiens, they were doing a good job at containing Tampa. Sherratt and Weber were out there a ton. Petrie doing his thing. But it was just Tampa just kept funneling. We saw early in the game Anthony Cirelli get to the front of the net. Hack Price. That started something. Gallagher was doing the same thing. But Tampa just had more of the attack mode in their veins. And you saw it from all their defensemen. Erik Cernak had never scored a Stanley Cup playoff goal in his career. He scores the first goal of the game. You look at the first goal of the game, Brayden Point this is Brayden Point, a show last night, but he back checks. They're looking for a pass in the slot. He breaks it up, passes it to Cernak. They break out the other way. Then we see Cernak. He goes down the ice. He finds Palat, but he keeps skating. Chernak's a stay-at-home defenseman. He's a mauler. I like to call him the vacuum, because when players come up against him one-on-one, you don't see that guy again, because you just fall into Erik Cernak. But in this play, he follows his pass like a great shooter in the NBA. Yeah, you think you're going to make the shot, but you follow your rebound. You follow the shot, you get that rebound. Cernak did the same thing here. He finds Palat. Palat's streaking down the right side. Chernak's in the middle of the ice. Palat, just a perfect shot pass where Cernak deflects it off his stick over the shoulder of Carey Price to make it 1-0. And, Erik Cernak, not a goal scorer. We see the whole night. Casey mentioned it. in game 7, it might have been Mikhail Sergachev's best game of his career. And he didn't have a point. He didn't do anything spectacular, but he was just efficient. I thought he was fantastic again last night. This guy just doesn't make a lot of mistakes. And looking at Montreal, we talked about the Pacioretty for Suzuki deal and the Vegas Golden Knights wanting that one back. In hindsight now, the Montreal Canadiens are in the Stanley Cup final trading Mikhail Sergachev for Jonathan Drouin. Drouin is on personal leave, whatever that means to you. All I know is he's not playing. Sergachev has won a Stanley Cup and is now 3 games away from winning his second one, where he would help the Montreal Canadiens defense a lot. Because after that top 4, John Merrill, Eric Gustafsson, it gets leaky. It gets a little faulty for the Montreal Canadiens. And it's tough. They don't trust those two to play 5-on-5. Gustafsson only plays power play minutes. But we see the whole night. Hedman played a great game. I mentioned in the pregame show, Hedman's just been fair for me. He was the Conn Smythe Trophy winner last year. To me, if it was voting, he'd be the 4th or 5th guy in the Tampa roster. Point, Kucherov, Vasilevsky are all above him. I'd put Ryan McDonough above him. McDonough would never win it because he doesn't have the points, which is stupid. But, he's just been okay. But last night he was aggressive. And he wasn't afraid to hold the puck, make a play that really wasn't there. We see him how he has the puck at the blue line. He just skates sideways and can make things happen. That's Victor Hedman. That's the essence of the player. And he came to play last night and played fantastic. But it was just constant pressure. Montreal, prior to, when Dominic Ducharme was tested positive with COVID, he's the head coach. After that, we really didn't see it affect the Vegas series. Because in game 3, Vegas threw away a game because Marc-Andre Fleury couldn't handle a puck. Josh Anderson put it in the back of the net. Game 4, Vegas wins it, but it's in overtime, so, fair. Then Montreal goes on to win the next 2 games and wins the series. Last night was the first night since Ducharme has been removed from the bench where I believe that the Montreal coaching staff of Luke Richardson, Alex Burrows, and Sean Burke were outcoached. Now, there's no shame in that. On the other side is John Cooper. John Cooper, in all likelihood, will be the head coach for Team Canada at the 2022 Beijing Olympics. If he's not, he's going to be on the bench because the guy is he's a winner and he's built a program in Tampa Bay that looks pretty indestructible after last night. But I said, and this is just common sense. I mean, you didn't have to listen to me. If you watch hockey, one of the best shutdown centers in the NHL is Philippe Danault. I like to add a little French to it's Philippe Danault, but I like to add a little French, if you notice. He's not going to get any points, but what he does do is eliminate your top players from scoring. So his expected goals, he's a plus because he skunked Mark Stone. Yet last night, Luke Richardson never tried to get out of the matchup that he had the first shift. He had it was the Barclay Goodrow, Blake Coleman, and Yanni Gourde line against Danault, Gallagher, and Artturi Lehkonen. And I don't understand why. Yes, you're on the road. It's tougher to get to that matchup. But he did it in Vegas. He did it in Winnipeg. He did it against Austin Matthews. And is John Cooper a better coach than Paul Maurice, Sheldon Keefe, and Peter DeBoer? Yes, but he's not that much better of a coach. You can win a draw and tell your center, get off the ice. We've seen it in the past where Danault starts a game because you have to set your lineup first as a road team. What does he do? He wins the draw, skis directly to the bench because you want that matchup. And Luke Richardson didn't fight hard enough for it. Last night, the matchup was Brayden Point, Kucherov, Palat against Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki, and Tyler Toffoli. Both of these teams, top lines. Now, in essence, that makes sense. But that Montreal line is not good enough defensively to go up against Point, Kucherov, and Plot. And that was evident. And do they win the game if Danault is on the ice? Maybe not, because Kucherov went legend in the third period. But you hurt yourself because you limit your best players from scoring goals. Cole Caulfield was invisible last night. The two plays I remember most from Cole Caulfield was him getting shots blocked from very far out. Nick Suzuki, who I normally love, you see him jump off the page. You could have told me he didn't dress, and I wouldn't fight you on that. Toffoli was just there. These guys were afterthoughts because they had to deal with that tractor trailer, Nikita Kucherov, Brayden Point, all night. So it's not just, okay, well, Gallagher and them, well, they didn't score that many goals. It's getting your best players in their prime position to score a goal. Blake Coleman, Barclay Goodrow, and Yanni Gourde are no slouches. But you want that matchup. You want that hell of a lot more than saying, okay, Caulfield, who's 20. Okay, Suzuki, who's 21. I want you to play great defensively all night and then go down and score a couple goals for us. It's not going to happen. This Montreal team, that's not the way they play. The most effective player for the Montreal Canadiens last night, and I love the guys, so you might say I'm being a homer here. I don't believe I am. Josh Anderson was the best Montreal forward. I think he was the best player, including Carey Price. He created the most offensively. Why? Because he had a favorable matchup. A lot of the night, he was on the ice against Stamkos, or he was on the ice against the fourth line, and he could create. It's just getting a matchup that's good for you. And Luke Richardson did not fight hard enough to get his best players out of a bad one. And could Caulfield and them do more? Of course. But I view this as a coaching failure by Luke Richardson. You see what's happening. It's 2-1 going into the third period. Blake Coleman scores a goal against the Danault line. So they were -1 last night, to their credit. Well, not really to their credit. But you're down 2-1. Sherratt scores a fluky goal after a pair of bounces off a Stamkos stick and a Ryan McDonagh shin pad. So you go into the third period thinking, okay, we're down 2-1. Who the hell knows here? But you continue with the matchup that is not working. And it's only a matter of time because Kucherov in the first 10 minutes was bad. After that, he was a man on a mission. Early in the third period, he starts firing the puck, creating opportunities. Palat scores early in the third period. Then Kucherov, a few minutes later, just a beautiful wrister, goes over the glove of Carey Price. And at 4-1, the game is over. Before you can even think, well, it's 2-1, maybe we can come back if we make a few in-game adjustments. Coaching is not everything. If you play sports, a coach is more of a figurehead. He can be a leader. But what can a coach do that players don't? Make an in-game adjustment. Change the line. Do something to change your fate. And I don't believe he did that last night. In the first 6 minutes of the third period, it's 4-1. The game is over. Curtains. Eventually, the game spiraled out of control. We see Gallagher and Sergachev go at it. Shea Weber gets fined $5,000 for sloshing Nikita Kucherov, but it was too late. These fireworks are nothing. Eventually, Tampa scores on the power play, which could be a mistake of the Montreal Canadiens. Don't let the dragon breathe its fire. Don't let the Camaro start flying down, the highway, because it's going to blow right past you. But for Luke Richardson, this was just a flat-out mistake. It was a bad night for him as a head coach. Now, was his team great? No. Like I said, Josh Anderson was one player that stood out to me. Shea Weber and Sherratt had a tough night. They called that goofy penalty on Sherratt, which wasn't a penalty, just like the penalty. I believe it was Blake Coleman in the first period. That wasn't a penalty either. But Sherratt had a few turnovers. He was on the ice for the first goal. That's going to happen. It's growing pains. Sherratt and Weber have been spectacular all playoffs long. I don't expect for them to be as bad as they were in game one. for what it's worth, you go -2, which I don't, plus minus is an empty calorie stat to me. But, Cole Caulfield was on the ice for 3 goals last night. His line. I just mentioned Kucherov had 3 points last night. He's up to 30 now for the playoffs. Brayden Point had 3 points last night, up to 23. They're 1-2 in scoring in the NHL playoffs. Steven Stamkos scores a goal. I mentioned him as one of my X factors in the pregame pod with Casey. Don't let him get confidence. The guy's still got a great shot. I don't believe he's half the player he was when he was drafted, but don't give him the ability to shoot. He's still got one of the best shots in the NHL. Don't give him confidence and let him shoot freely. And Montreal did that. Montreal is normally a very systematically sound team. They are smart. Last night, they just weren't. And it started behind the bench. Now, Dominic Ducharme is eligible to return in Game 3, but I don't expect Luke Richardson to make the same mistakes he did in Game 1. I believe he will work harder to get Philip Danault on the ice against Brayden Point. And like I said, it serves dual purpose. It gives you your best chance at limiting. I'm not going to say stop, because this isn't stopping Mark Stone and Max Pacioretty. These 2 players are above those 2 players. They're Stanley Cup champions. They're winners. They're clutch hockey players. So you're not going to stop them, but can you limit it? Could that line just get 1 goal a game? If Point, Kucherov get 1 goal a game, Montreal, that's a win. I'm not saying you're going to win the game, but that's a win in your mentality. They only got 1 goal tonight. Can the rest of our group, can we score 2? Or can we score 3 if Stamkos scores another one? Can we win that game 3-2? And for Caulfield and Suzuki, this was their first career Stanley Cup final game. I give them a mulligan for last night, because we see players in the first round shit their pants. These 2 guys have played fantastic in the playoffs. They get to a big moment. It's their first attempt, and it doesn't go well. But you got Game 2 tomorrow night. There's guys who never get out of the first round, who face that pressure, which is not, it's pressure, but not really. It's the first round. You get 3 more series to win the cup. And they have their trousers full of crap in the first round. These guys have already surpassed those minimal expectations. So they didn't have Armia last night, which I think hurt, but we saw the entire Montreal roster got outplayed. You think of last night, I thought Tyler Johnson had a lot of jump for the Tampa Bay Lightning. He's a 4th line center. But that 4th line of Johnson, Colton, and Maroon were fantastic. Johnson got robbed on a breakaway attempt by Carey Price late in the second period. Ross Colton early in the third had a great chance to score, fired over the net. The big rig was all over the puck, making his presence felt. And Montreal had their faults, but Tampa was the better hockey team last night. They were the defending Stanley Cup champions. They made their mark. Now, what does that mean for Game 2? If you listen to me, it means nothing. I don't believe in momentum in a series. I believe every game is a different work of art, if you will. Every game is a blank canvas where you can write or create your own story. Game 2 is not going to be, Sherratt was terrible in Game 1, and Luke Richardson couldn't get these players off the ice when he needed them to. If it is, then we have a big problem here. And the Tampa Bay Lightning are going to dispose of the Montreal Canadiens rather quickly. If that's the same story, if you flip the page and it's the same and it's Groundhog Day, then we have a problem. If you're a Montreal Canadiens fan, Houston, we have a fucking problem. But every game you have the opportunity to write a new story. And for Luke Richardson, for Alex Burrows, for Carey Price, Game 2 is a fresh start. It just is. It doesn't have to be more than just a game. And for Carey Price, it won't be. We know his mentality. We know Carey Price. For a guy like Tyler Toffoli, it won't be. He's a 2-time Stanley Cup champion. He's got all the confidence in the world. Can we say that for the kids? No, because we don't have any sample size for us to know how are they going to react in this situation. How are they going to feel in this situation? Because we don't have that data. I have faith in Shea Weber and Ben Sherratt coming out and saying, it's just a tough start. Let's go out there and win game 3. We go home with the split. We're still right where we want to be. And that's 100% the truth. For Tampa, you want it to be Groundhog Day. Now, are you going to be as good as you were in game 1? No, because I thought they played a pretty flawless game last night. A few odd man rushes where Shea Weber had a breakaway, but Vasilevsky made the saves he needed to make. They were sound defensively. They didn't get hemmed in their own zone. They didn't take penalties other than the one on Coleman, which wasn't a penalty. And you didn't give Montreal any hope. Like I mentioned, Ben Sherratt scored. I never thought, okay, Montreal is winning tonight. They didn't have momentum. They didn't have agency in the game. So you want it to be Groundhog Day. You want the story to remain the same. But the good thing about sports, at least for a little while now, there's always tomorrow. And eventually for teams, tomorrow is goodbye because you're eliminated and you've run out of time. Your story has come to its ultimate, penultimate close. But this is only game 2. Tomorrow night is game 2. And adjustments, strategical decisions, lineups can be adjusted. And I think Yoel Armia will be back in the lineup tomorrow night. Does Montreal want to get away from a 4th line versus 4th line? Do they want Corey Perry, Eric Stahl, and Yoel Armia to go up against Yanni Gourde, Blake Coleman, and Barclay Goodrow and allow Josh Anderson, Paul Byron, and Jesperi Kotkaniemi to get a lot of that 4th line matchup? I don't think that's a bad idea because Anderson was a beast last night. When he's skating straight line and he's hitting people, he is so effective, and that's why he's viewed as a unicorn in your podcast host eyes. What he can do to change a game, his physical attributes are off the charts. So do you fight for that? And we'll see what happens tomorrow night. But in game 1, it's about Tampa Bay showing we fought the 56-game regular season. We weren't the best team. We've gotten through these first couple rounds of the playoffs. In the conference final, we got to a game 7. But ultimately, we got through it. And we're back where we were last year, except there's fans now. We're not in a bubble. But that doesn't matter. We're still the Kings. We're still at the top of the mountain. And for Montreal, it's about taking them off the throne and doing something about it. And we'll see if they can. But a great effort for Tampa Bay in game 1. A lackluster one for Montreal where a few of their players didn't show up, but it was ultimately, in my opinion, Tampa Bay just being the better team. And Tampa is the better team. They should win this series. Does that mean they're going to win this series? No. Vegas is a better team than the Montreal Canadiens, top to bottom, but they didn't win. Many would argue the Toronto Maple Leafs are a better team than the Montreal Canadiens, so I wouldn't. I've said all year one of the best rosters when it comes to just team. There's no superstar, but just look at a team and how you build a team. I said the Montreal Canadiens are one of the best fabricated teams in the NHL. Credit to Mark Bergevin. But that's how they're going to win this series as a team. Tampa, I believe, can win this series with a couple great individual efforts. Nikita Kucherov, Brayden Point, Steven Stamkos, Victor Hedman, they have more individuals who can change a series than Montreal. But a team can find a spark and win. The Canadiens did it in 93. The St. Louis Blues did it in 2019. Can they find it? And we'll see. It starts in game 2, live at Amalie Arena Wednesday night. Game 2 is Wednesday, as I just mentioned. However, game 3 is back in Montreal, and that's going to be Friday night at the Bell Center. And so far in these playoffs, we've seen in Montreal that they've had 3,500 fans. And, it's been good. Of course, any fans are better than no fans. But the Bell Center, I've talked about this ad nauseum. I'm sure you're sick of it, but it's the biggest building in the NHL when it comes to an NHL rink. And it can host a lot of people. It doesn't have a bad seat in the house. And looking at the amount of people outside the rink watching the game, you have to wonder, why the hell aren't there more people allowed in the arena? And the Montreal Canadiens had a similar thought, where today they pitched to the government to allow half capacity in the Bell Center for game 3 Friday night. That would be 10,500 fans in the building, which would obviously skyrocket from 3,500. But, their argument is, we haven't had a positive test in the Bell Center so far. It's a safe environment. We can socially distance. Look at outside. What the hell is the difference? And whether this plea was made or not by the team, I doubt it, but I'll do it. It's the Stanley Cup final. The last time the Montreal Canadiens were in the Stanley Cup final was 1993. That's a long time ago. That's almost 30 years of not getting to a Stanley Cup final. And you're saying, okay, we're only allowing 3,500 people in the building. Whether Montreal wins this series or not, it's about having that experience. Who knows? There's teams. The Chicago Cubs won 108 years without winning a World Series. They were only in 2 in that 108-year span. So saying, well, there's always next year. Well, there's not always the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Tampa Bay Lightning have been in 4 Stanley Cups since 2004. The Pittsburgh Penguins have been in 4 Stanley Cups since 2008. There's not always those teams. It's not the Chicagos, the Blackhawks, not the Cubs, but there's teams that have long droughts without winning or even getting to the Stanley Cup final. Obviously, you think of the Toronto Maple Leafs right away, but it can be a while before you get back. The Buffalo Bills have not been back to a Super Bowl since the days of Jim Kelly, when they lost 4 in a row. When you have this moment, you want to celebrate it. You want to at least say, I was there when this happened. Do you remember this? When Chris Cuthbert is on the telecast and he says, did you see that? And I give a ton of credit to the Montreal Canadiens. I think this took a lot more stones, when I mean balls, than people really know. Saying to have 10,500 fans, it sounds, in the moment, sounds so, easy. Oh, everybody's going to be behind this. I guarantee you there's at least half the crowd that are still upset with, how could you even have 3,500 in the stands? Because there's enough people who live life in fear. And again, I'm dividing an audience right now. I believe you put people in the stands. You put half capacity. You're damn right. We're vaccinating people at a high rate. And even if you have 1 dose, guess what? Life has risk. Every day you go for a drive in a car, you have the risk of getting hit. Every day you go for a walk down the street, you could get mugged, you could get whatever. I'm not trying to be a negative Nancy here, but life is a risk. Living life is risky. And I'm not saying everybody in the building is going to get COVID, but you have to enjoy the moment. Allow the people of Montreal, allow people flying in from Toronto, from hopefully Richelieu area, Brexton, if you want to pay those prices, allow more people in the building to enjoy this moment. Prices are astronomical, but if you can pay for it, get the hell in the building. And for the government, I'm really interested to see what the decision is going to be. Because if I had to guess, I'm going to say they're going to deny this. Maybe they'll agree on like 6,000. That's my guess. But this should be a no-brainer. It's been a long stretch of time where we've all gone through COVID. We couldn't do anything. We couldn't go to live sporting events. We had to watch the playoffs in the bubble last year with no fans. We've gone past that. We're getting vaccinated, which people tell us you get vaccinated, you get liberties, you get more freedoms. You're going to get these opportunities. Well, put up or shut up. Government, doctors. And I really hope that the Montreal Canadiens can have 10,500 fans. And whether you're a Montreal fan or not, the atmosphere in the Bell Center is better than any in the NHL. Again, I haven't been to every barn in the States, but I'll say, okay, let's take it on. Like Nashville, whoever else, go to a game in Montreal and experience that. It's better than the TD Garden. It's better. It's way better than the Scotiabank Arena in Toronto. It's just a special building, and I think it should be treated as such in this series, and the people should be allowed to go. It's time we take off the kid gloves. It's time we take off the shackles, and we live a little bit, because we haven't for a long period of time. Allow people in the building. If you have how many people outside the building, and that makes sense to have them all within a centimeter of each other, but you can't have them in the building, doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But I hope the government is not shooting 35 under at the no balls open and get something right for once. But we'll see what they ultimately decide moving forward. So there's my little tangent for the day, but I hope we hear tonight that they can, because that would be great. Friday night, have half the barn full. That will be a loud, raucous crowd. So I really hope that the Montreal Canadiens and the team and ultimately the fans of the game of hockey get rewarded for a shitty time when it comes to COVID, and they get into that building. Outside of the Stanley Cup final news, it was an interesting day in the NHL where two signings were made today. One really minor and one that could have a profound impact on a franchise, where the Edmonton Oilers re-signed, former number 1 overall pick Ryan Nugent-Hopkins to an 8-year, $41 million extension, which is $5.125 million a year on the cap. And Nugent-Hopkins is 28, so this locks him in, basically to play his whole career in Edmonton. He's coming off a 7-year contract, so off his entry level, he got a long-term extension. It looked like he may be departing Edmonton, but they find a deal they both enjoy, and he's going to be an Oiler, seeming for life after getting drafted first overall. Now, I thought about this contract today, had a few conversations with people, and ultimately, I think this is a win for the Edmonton Oilers. Now, is Ryan Nugent-Hopkins a center? To me, he's not a center. He's a winger. Now, wingers do get paid a lot of money. Think of a guy number 16. He makes quite a bit of money. You think of Mikko Rantanen and Matthew Tkachuk. Now, is Nugent-Hopkins better than those players? I don't think so, but he's effective at what he does. He can play with Leon Draisaitl. He can play with Connor McDavid. And what's the best thing Edmonton has done is they lock him in for 8 years. It's not a huge amount of money. They still have cap flexibility, but what do they have? They have Connor McDavid, they have Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and they have Leon Draisaitl, all on 8-year extensions. Now, Draisaitl and McDavid have less years remaining on it, but they all have them set deals under their cap. And it gives them the flexibility to go out and add players to their core, add depth to this roster that's hoping to compete for a title in the not too distant future. But I like the deal. He's had 16 goals, 19 assists last season. He is a 25 to 30 goal scorer. He's a great power play. He had 9 goals in the power play last season, 20 power play points. That's his bread and butter, where the Edmonton Oilers power play has been ranked in the top 3 the past 3 seasons, in large part due to the MVP season hopefully on Draisaitl, and then the MVP season of Connor McDavid this season. So interesting enough seeing, these guys do what they do, but Nugent-Hopkins is part of that. He's not the straw that stirs the drink, but he is part of the drink. He is the guy who can benefit from these superstars. And I like the deal because it locks him in. It's set. He's staying there. He could have hit the open market. I think he could have maybe got $6 million a year, but this tells me he really enjoys Edmonton. He spent his entire career there, and you got McDavid, you got Draisaitl. Who are you going to play with that's going to make you any better? I think sometimes you got to look at that as a free agent and say, yeah, I can make this much money, but am I going to be as effective as a player if I leave? A guy like Zach Hyman, who's going to be an unrestricted free agent, I think needs to look at the same thing here. If I go to, just for example, Florida, am I going to be as good? Can I be as effective as a player as I am in Toronto? Well, maybe not, because Alex Barkov will actually go in the corner to get the puck. It's a little joke, but I like to poke fun, as you know, at Toronto, but Hyman knows his role. He knows where Matthews and Marner are going to be on the ice. He is the workhorse of that line. He creates turnovers. I still think he can be a good player, but will he be as good as he is in Toronto? He's set up for success in Toronto. We've seen that. Leaving, we've seen tons of players leave their best situation where they have a contract year, they have a great season, they move on, and after that, they're just an afterthought. David Clarkson was a great player in New Jersey. He went to Toronto. It was a disaster. Alex Simmonds was a very effective player in Washington. He went to Carolina. He was a disaster. It just happens to players where the new locale is not what the old one was. And it can derail your career. It can completely derail your career, where Ryan Miller was great in Buffalo. He goes to St. Louis. He was a disaster for the St. Louis Blues. They were hoping to win a Stanley Cup. They were bounced early in large part due to Ryan Miller just not knowing what the hell he was doing in a St. Louis uniform, being out of his comfort zone, which was Buffalo, his entire career. So I think this will please Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. They know what Nugent-Hopkins is. The team knows what he does well, what he doesn't do. So now you have this type of player on your roster. You go out there and complement it with a Nugent-Hopkins-esque type player, but a different one, a more heavy player. I mentioned Zach Hyman. I think Zach Hyman would be a great fit on the Edmonton Oilers, because McDavid and Draisaitl, or McDavid, Yamamoto, these type line pairings would do great with Zach Hyman because they're similar to Matthews and Marner. We see the way they play. It's about quickness, and it's about not necessarily getting involved physically. Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews are not guys that engage physically often. So getting a guy to go in that corner to do the brunt force work, that would be, I see that as a great fit, because it's doing what you're doing somewhere else. You're not going to a different line where you have to adapt to a new role. He would have the exact same one in Edmonton as he does in Toronto. So I wouldn't be surprised if Zach Hyman hits unrestricted free agency to see the Edmonton Oilers take a good stab at him and see if they can lure him to Edmonton and get him out of Toronto. But ultimately, I see this as a good signing for the Oilers. He has his limitations. He's 28, so he signed an 8-year deal. Towards the end of this deal, it could be bad. But Edmonton and Ken Holland believe that they can win a Stanley Cup in this window with McDavid, with Draisaitl, with Nugent-Hopkins, with hopefully Darnell Nurse with only a year remaining on his contract. You need to get a goaltender. You need to complement your roster, and your bottom 6 defense have to be better. But this is a step in the right direction. He is a good player. He's a player that it's hard to replace in free agency, and trades are just difficult to make in the cap right now. So you have a guy that you trust. And I think this is a tradable contract as well. If it doesn't go well, if he wants out, I think you can trade this contract. Yeah, it's got a lot of years on it, but he's not making an abundance of money. 5.125 is very manageable. You can make a trade for a player for player trade and, find your way out of it. The other signing today was Wayne Simmonds. This was a shocker to me. The Toronto Maple Leafs re-signing Wayne Simmonds to a 2-year, $1.8 million extension, which is worth $900,000 a season. And this one caught me off guard because Wayne Simmonds, the back 9 of the season, really the last 15 games and into the playoffs, was a complete non-factor for the Toronto Maple Leafs. He was good in stretches, but prior to his injury, he was a very effective player. But that was like a 10-game stretch. It wasn't like he was, lighting up the league, or Wayne Simmonds, a Philly, prior to that, where he was just a dominant force. He was just a good player. And, in the playoffs, he was like Joe Thornton. You hardly noticed him when he was on the ice. He did nothing to help the team win. And for Toronto to give him not only an extension, which I thought was crazy, because you have Spezza, you have your veteran. Why not complement the bottom of your lineup with younger players? It doesn't all have to be veterans. Ross Colton is playing on the 4th line for the Tampa Bay Lightning. The guy's 23 years old. He's developed in the system. Yanni Gourde was an undrafted free agent on the 3rd line. These bottom 6 forwards, 4th line guys, they don't all have to be veterans. We see it is a veteran it's a veteran Montreal 4th line, but they don't all have to be that way. And for Toronto, so Spezza's likely going to be on your 4th line. He didn't really get moved up from that this season. You don't want Jason Spezza to be playing center all year. He's not fast enough. That's just my opinion. But so now you have Spezza. Does that mean that Simmonds is now pegged on your 3rd line? Because that shouldn't just be a gimme to me. Otherwise, you got Spezza and Simmonds playing together in a regular season. Even in the playoffs, Wayne Simmonds is not the big rig, Pat Maroon. He's not Corey Perry. We just saw him go up against Corey Perry and Eric Stahl, and it was a no contest. They were better than Wayne Simmonds. And good for Wayne Simmonds for getting the contract. Sign the thing. It's only $900,000, but you get 2 years. Now, for Toronto, they can bury this contract. I'm sure that'll be the argument. If Wayne Simmonds terrible, we can put him on Robidas Island. Lou Lamoriello did that to Stefan Robidas. He can go to the minors. We'll never see him again. He'll retire. Okay, maybe. But if you sign a veteran to a 2-year contract and it doesn't go well and you bury him in the minors, first of all, I don't think the team will love that. And I mean the players. And also, why would a veteran free agent want to go to Toronto after seeing that? You bury a veteran, you treat him like crap on the way out, it has long-term effects. Veterans can be like, no, I'm not going there. And first of all, you sign Wayne Simmonds right now. Why not wait till the season's over and see if Corey Perry will forgive you for not signing him, and maybe he'll come to Toronto for next season? Are you going to go sign Wayne Simmonds, Jason Spezza, and Corey Perry? Like, this isn't an old folks' home. But it might be. I wouldn't have signed Wayne Simmonds. I would have taken my chances that Corey Perry's from Ontario. He wanted to come here last summer. Maybe he'll forgive us. He'll say, you know what? You made a mistake. I beat your ass in the playoffs. I've been to 2 straight cup finals, but I want to finish my career in Toronto. I'm a Toronto kid. I want to do it here. And maybe he'd come back because he loves the organization so much. Maybe not, because Corey Perry's got that sense about him. But I think he'd be welcome into that lineup. The Tavares injury would have no effect on Corey Perry coming there. That was not a dirty play. Nick Foligno's not coming back. At least maybe he will, because they're just re-signing everybody that didn't win for them this year. But I just find it puzzling why they're doing this. Wayne Simmonds does not deserve. I don't think he deserved to be re-signed by this team. Not that he doesn't deserve it. Toronto shouldn't want him back. He was not a signing that worked out. Joe Thornton was not a signing that worked out. Their veteran re-signing that worked out was Jason Spezza, and they addressed that a few weeks ago, which is a check mark, a good decision for the Toronto Maple Leafs. But Wayne Simmonds, He's got nothing left. What Toronto loves to do, and this is really, I talked to my dad about this today because he's a Toronto fan. He was frustrated with the signing. Toronto loves to bring back people from Toronto, and I don't understand it. We saw it back in the day with the Muskoka Five, that line, everybody from Ontario, and it's this lovable thing where, oh, we got our guy, he's from Toronto, he's back home. I could give a shit where a player is from. I want the best players available. If a player is from a fucking hole in the ground, I'll take him if he can play the game. That's all I care about. But Toronto seems to have this love affair. It doesn't matter the general manager either. It's not just Kyle Dubas, because they did this in the past. Brian Burke did this, and the Fergler before him. They love having players from Toronto. And you don't need to have that marketing, because Sportsnet and TSN do that enough. There's a Stanley Cup final going on right now, and they're writing rumors about who the Leafs are going to sign this offseason, which is insulting to me, because let them have the series. Who gives a crap about Toronto? Let's talk about Colorado. Let's talk about these teams in the final. But now Wayne Simmonds from Toronto. Well, I don't care. He was from Toronto last year, and he stunk up the joint. Why not? Corey Perry's from Toronto. If you need that little incentive to sign a player, that's what gets you excited. Well, Corey Perry's from Toronto, and he's a much more effective player at this point of his career than Wayne Simmonds. And I don't really think that's an opinion. I think just that's a fact. If you know the game of hockey, you know that to be true. And for whatever reason, Kyle Dubas, Brendan Shanahan and co. say, let's bring back Wayne Simmonds. Maybe he's got some juice left and you give him a second year. I think it's a bad contract. Nugent-Hopkins could be a bad contract. I think it's a good one right now. And you have your window where you want to win. Toronto signing this player where you already have a player who's 37 plus, who's slow, who is still productive, but again, not where are you going to fit him into this lineup? And I don't think it's a very good signing, and it's rewarding a player with a second year on that deal for doing absolutely nothing for your team the past season. But we'll see if Wayne Simmonds can turn it around. Maybe that injury he's going to come back after a full off season of getting healthy and he'll be an effective player. But looking at his body of work this past season, this signing looks very bad today. Close out the hockey news of the day. Buffalo Sabres have been kind of in a holding pattern where they've been looking at different coaches to hire. It's been rumored that John Tortorella could have been the next head coach of the Buffalo Sabres after he and the Columbus Blue Jackets mutually agreed to part ways. But today they decided to stick with who was there before, the assistant coach and then the interim head coach for the back half of the season. Don Granato was named the 20th head coach in team history. It's a safe hire. What hiring Don Granato really does for the Buffalo Sabres is he's a good guy. He comes from a hockey family, obviously Cammy and Tony Granato. Tony coaching the Wisconsin Badgers for a number of years now. But he's hired, and he's probably going to be fired in a number of years. The Buffalo Sabres have been a mess for a long period of time, and it's only going to get worse. They're in the midst of another rebuild, even though I can't even really call it a rebuild because this rebuild hasn't had any success. They haven't won anything. They haven't made the playoffs. Getting Jack Eichel, getting Rasmus Dahlin, getting high-end players. It's getting Sam Reinhart third overall. It hasn't produced in them winning or even being competitive. But they're likely going to trade Jack Eichel. What do they do there? Do they finally trade Rasmus Ristolainen? Does Rasmus Dahlin want to stay in Buffalo? Can they re-sign Linus Ullmark in free agency? This team is Sam Reinhart's rumored he wants out. It's ugly. And this team, like Columbus, Brad Larson, a longtime assistant, got the head coaching job. I believe it's similar to Brad Larson getting his. You're going to coach for a number of years and you're going to get fired. The juxtaposition is maybe you can be Jet Blashill. Jet Blashill took over after Mike Babcock left Detroit for Toronto. And it was clear that Detroit was in a state of transition. They had made the playoffs 22 straight seasons, and their talent was getting old. Zetterberg, Datsuk left for Russia, Holmstrom retired, Franzen was forced to retire due to head injuries. Nick Lidstrom was gone, Hasek, Osgood, all their great players were departing. And Blashill's been at the helm now for 6 seasons. They haven't made the playoffs in any of his. He made the playoffs in his first year. After that, he's missed the last 5. But they like him there. The players seem to like him, and he's kept a job. So it's less likely, because you look at the ownership group with the Pagulas and Buffalo, they love firing people. They seem to get off on firing people, but maybe you can have some success, grow some talent, develop some of your pieces in the system, and you can turn that into a longer term job for you. But for Brad Larson, for Don Granato, I see this as a placeholder for a coach that you like better in 2 to 3 years when the team is hopefully in a position where they can be competitive, make the playoffs, and be the New York Rangers now, where you have Dan Quinn, the NCAA coach. He developed some players. You're starting to see them kind of around the corner, but you can't get over that hump. So you get rid of Dan Quinn, you bring in Gerard Gallant, who's a proven veteran coach who's led teams to playoffs and has had some playoff success. So I see that's the model here, where we'll see a new bench boss in these couple of organizations when these teams can hopefully turn it around. But I could be wrong. Congrats to Don Granato. Great hockey family. He's been coaching a long time, so he's going to get the opportunity. For him, hopefully he has a voice in the organization where it's not the Pagulas, it's not just Kevin Adams running the show. He should have a say in the Jack Eichel decision. He should try to talk to Jack Eichel and see if he can do anything to repair that relationship, because Jack Eichel is still the face of this team. Sam Reinhart is still one of the best players on this roster. Can you keep some of this talent? Obviously, you cannot trade them, but if players are disgruntled, then it's over before it starts. You need to have a positive attitude in this team, because it's not going to be pretty in Buffalo for quite a while. It's also rumored that Andre Tourigny, who's been former head coach of the Ottawa 67s, he was head coach for Team Canada at the World Juniors, winning a gold medal, and he's been working with Hockey Canada. He coached on Gerard Gallant's staff at the World Hockey Championship. He was on the bench at the World Juniors this year. It's rumored he's in the mix for the Arizona Coyotes job. Obviously, they departed from Rick Tocchet, and they're still looking to hire a head coach. So Andre Tourigny is the rumored favorite for the job. He's interviewed a few times. He would be another guy to be a first-time NHL head coach, which would be interesting. But Arizona's a similar position where they're trying to move their captain, Oliver Ekman-Larsson. They are trying to move Connor Garland, one of the best forwards. What do they do with Barrett Hayton? What do they do with some of these guys on the roster? Can they move the Nick Hjalmarsson contract, Brad Richardson? This team's in a state of transition, and Tourigny, being with Hockey Canada, being a favorite of Hockey Canada, would be an interesting hire. But is he another guy that's there for a little while and gone before we even learn, his last name? So a lot of hockey news today. Obviously, that almost an hour into this podcast, I've only discussed the NHL, but a lot of news. In the NBA last night, the Los Angeles Clippers survived elimination, winning Game 5 in Phoenix. And really, this was the Paul George game. Paul George scored 41 points on the road, shooting 15 for 20, 15 for 20 field goals, just a 13 rebounds, 6 assists, a clutch performance from Paul George where, Marcus Morris Sr. had a great first half. He scored 20 points in the first half to keep the Clippers ahead. But it was in the second half where Paul George scored 25 points in the second half, took the game over, and Devin Booker couldn't match him. Paul George is the better player. Chris Paul was too busy getting mixed up with Patrick Beverley the whole night to really be a factor. DeAndre Ayton had one of his worst games of the postseason, only getting 10 points, 11 rebounds. And Paul George, he's been criticized. He gave himself the nickname Playoff P a few years ago. And from then, it's been a disaster for him. Going out in the first round after first round last year, being up 3-1 against the Denver Nuggets in the second round and blowing it. But in these playoffs, for half of the Utah series, he did not have Kawhi Leonard. He hasn't used that as an excuse. He keeps shooting. He's not afraid to shoot the ball even when he's missing. And last night, it's an elimination game on the road and raucous crowd in Phoenix. And he comes up big, 41. He got good efforts from Senior, who had 22 points, Reggie Jackson, who had 23. DeMarcus Cousins had 15 off the bench. But it was Paul George's game. He put the stamp on it. And it keeps the Clippers season alive. It gets them in a position where Game 6 is tomorrow night in Los Angeles. It's not likely that Kawhi Leonard's going to play. But again, you're on your home court. You have your crowd. And it shifts the momentum because now it looks like, well, the Los Angeles Clippers should win Game 6 at home. They should be up. And I believe if Kawhi Leonard was playing in the series, they would already have won it. Because Game 2, they had the game. They give up that late buzzer-beating dunk alley-oop to DeAndre Ayton. That can't happen. Game 4, they shoot 32% as a team. 32%. Phoenix only shot 33%. Pathetic. Kawhi Leonard would have made some of those shots. But Paul George was terrible in Game 4, and to his credit, comes back in Game 5 and answers the bell. That's what you need from your superstars. If you have a bad night, can you come back and do it? And we'll see if Trae Young can do that tonight for the Atlanta Hawks. Can he bounce back? He had 35 points in Game 3, but he rolled his ankle. He became really tentative down the stretch, clearly favoring his ankle. But can you be the man? Can you distribute the basketball? It cannot be Kevin Huerter being the point guard for this team. Don't just shoot threes, Trae Young. They want you to shoot those deep threes like they want Giannis Antetokounmpo for the Bucks to shoot those threes. Get to the paint. Get your floater going. You got a great mid-range shot. Distribute the basketball. But he's had a great playoff so far. But can you do what you did in the second round? They were down 2-1 to Philly. And they found a way to win Game 4. They were down 26, but they scraped, they clawed, and they ultimately came away with the victory. Can you do the same thing tonight? Can you find a way to win? And that's the big question tonight. Can they find a way to push through and win this all-important Game 4 tonight? Because if they lose tonight, I believe Milwaukee will win this series in 5 games. They'll go home, Trae Young on the limp, not a lot of fight left in this Hawks club. Basically, Milwaukee's a healthy group. Chris Middleton having 20 points in the fourth quarter the other night, really being the closer for this team. Giannis being the best player, but Middleton being the alpha that he needs to be. Bobby Portis being an animal off the bench, shooting threes, but grabbing the more important, the rebounds. Capella, Gallinari, you need to do a better job of rebounding tonight. Do not allow Milwaukee to get so many second chance opportunities. Do not allow these big men to dominate the glass. Get in there, battle. John Collins, you're a big body. Get closer to the paint, help rebound. It needs to be a team effort for the Atlanta Hawks tonight. So we'll see if Trae Young can have the Paul George type game that he had in Game 5 last night. Paul George came up small in Game 4. Maybe Trae Young will do the same. But for Atlanta, I believe this is way more important than the Clippers. The Clippers play better when they're on their heels, when their back's against the wall. Atlanta's a young group who's never been in this position. The closest series they've had is 2-2. If you put your backs up against the wall in Milwaukee where you have to win it on the road, I don't believe they will. So I see this as a must-win tonight. John Collins, Trae Young, Huerter, Capella had the game that you had in Game 4 where you just didn't give up. You limited Joel Embiid and play some tight defense, and you have a chance to do some damage tonight. Before we wrap up today's podcast, Wimbledon's had a crazy start. We see today Roger Federer be involved in a four-set match where he's down 2-1. He finds a way to win the fourth, and then his opponent, veteran Frenchman Adrian Manarino, decides to withdraw from the match due to an injury. So Federer advances. Not a great start for him, but he survives the possible upset. Then we see the opposite side of the coin. Serena Williams injures her leg at 3-all in the first set, and she has to retire. Her injury is that bad. Serena's not a person that gives up. Clearly, this was a serious injury. She wants to win another Grand Slam so desperately, having 23, needing one more to tie Margaret Court for the most Grand Slam wins ever. But she's forced to leave. And it's difficult, but I look at this as very parallel. Both of these men, Serena, Roger, they're both 39 years old. In any sport, 39 is old. In life, it isn't, but in sports, it is. Roger is in a draw where he could do some damage potentially still. He has Daniil Medvedev, but he's never made it to a quarterfinal on grass. He's got Sasha Zverev. He's never made it to a quarterfinal on glass. Denis Shapovalov. He's never made a deep run at Wimbledon. So could he do some damage still? Possibly. But we see a 4-set match in his first against Mannarino, a qualifier. Serena can't get over the hump. Had a great chance at the French Open, gets beat by an unranked player in the 4th round, injured now. It's just wear and tear. Roger's having a knee surgery every year. Serena is injured, cannot beat these players anymore. And father time, mother time is knocking at their door. They will be regarded as the GOATs of the sport in all likelihood. Novak Djokovic will have more Grand Slams than Roger Federer in all likelihood. But Roger Federer there will never be a tennis player as loved as Roger Federer. Novak Djokovic will never be in the same class when it comes to people loving him like they do Roger Federer. Serena Williams, doesn't have to get to 24 majors. She is the best of all time. She's one of the greatest athletes in the history of sports. Her dominance against women's tennis players is just uncanny. It's unparalleled. So what does this mean? Well, it gives an opportunity for other players. Can Carolina Pliskova finally break through? Does Ash Barty, she's won 1 major so far. Can she win on grass? She won a 3-set match against Carlos Suarez Navarro. Petra Kvitova being out. Does this provide an opportunity? Bianca Andreescu couldn't play today because of the rain. They had to reschedule 18 matches today. This opens up her draw. She lost in the first round at the French. She's going to have to play back-to-back days, which will be tough, Wednesday, Thursday. But can Bianca find some success? She hasn't had a string of success since winning the U.S. Open in 2019. Can she find it here? No, Stefano Tsitsipas being out in Djokovic's quarter. He clearly hasn't gotten over that loss against Djokovic being up 2-0 in the French Open final. But does this mean it's just cruise control for Novak? Can somebody break through and provide at least a sense of a threat? Wimbledon's great, but it's been an interesting start where we see Kvitova, former champion, out. Tsitsipas, a great player. Serena Williams, one of the best, out. And it's just kind of about survival of the fittest right now because they're going to have to play a lot of tennis in a short period of time because of the weather delays. And it'll be interesting to see, can Roger rebound from this? You win in 4 sets, whether it looked bad or not, you got through it. In the second round, in the third round, can you find your mojo? You're the best grass player in the history of the sport. Can you find that success? Can you at least get back to another final? He lost to Novak Djokovic in one of the most epic matches ever in 2019. Can you get back to that position? We'll see. It wasn't a great start today, but if Roger Federer is going to do it at any surface, it's going to be grass and it's going to be at the All England Club. So interesting start. A lot of interesting hockey topics today. Hope you guys enjoyed the podcast today. It was a lot of fun just diving into all this. I'll be back tomorrow night, like I said, 8 p.m. with a live Game 2 preview show of the Stanley Cup Final. Doing more shows later in the week, talking about all the things in the world of sports. A lot happening right now, so keep your eyes and ears posted for more content coming from me here to The Point. But as always, take care, everybody. Stay safe, and we'll talk soon.